Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Barakahak Wadash, Barakathum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure unto the end. This is the brother Ra'aya coming at you with another lesson, and I'll be reading from an article on alternet.org titled, God's Divine Plan. U.S. soldiers say commanders told them they're fighting for Armageddon. And hey, it's been an exciting week with all these military strikes going back and forth between the U.S., Israel, and Iran. And hey, it's just the beginning stages of Armageddon, the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, which is ultimately going to conclude in nuclear missiles being shot all across the earth and the United States of America being wiped off the face of the earth. And, I've done plenty of videos as well as other brothers showing that the Northern Army, as it says in Joel chapter 2, verse 20, the U.S. military is going to be brought, which, they've already got forces there and are going to eventually move even more forces there to that land, barren and desolate, Western Asia, the so-called Middle East, for the War of Armageddon. So, this is a bit of self-fulfilling prophecy, as the elder brother Ariala said in a video I watched, one of the World War III algos, because, hey, it is the divine plan for U.S. soldiers to fight in Armageddon, but it's not going to play out how you think it's going to play out. So-called Jesus isn't coming back to save America or save the Edomites or the so-called white people. Quite the contrary. He's coming to make war against you specifically and, the United States of America. Which brings us to Isaiah chapter 63. I'm going to start at verse 1. And the header reads, God's vengeance on the nations, the heathen nations. Who is this that cometh from Edom? So right off the bat, you Edomites, or so-called white people, with dyed garments from Basra. And Basra was an ancient chief city of the Edomites. So your modern day chief city, your modern day Basra would be the United States of America. This that is glorious in his apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength, I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save. And this is speaking of the Messiah, Yahushua, which is his true name, who has the appearance of a so-called dark-skinned Negro with a white woolly beard and afro, which you can read about in Revelation chapter 1, started around verse 14. He doesn't look like a so-called white man with stringy dog hair and blue eyes. Verse 2, Wherefore art thou red in thine apparel, and thy garments like him that treadeth in the wine fat? And, this is symbolic for the great death and destruction Yahushua is coming to bring, especially against you Edomites. Because, imagine you putting on a white garment and going and stomping on some grapes to make wine. You would look like you just came back from a mass homicide. Verse 3, I have trodden the winepress alone, and of the people there was none with me. For I will tread them in mine anger, and trample them in my fury, and their blood shall be sprinkled upon my garments, and I will stain all my raiment. For the day of vengeance is in mine heart, and the year of my redeemed, his elect, of you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans who are the true children of Israel, is come. And we can see that that day is vastly approaching. We're in the end game now, waiting for the last few prophecies before Yahushua's second coming to take place, which one of them is World War III, the battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, and, the mandatory implementation of the mark of the BEAST, that micro C-hip implant in Revelation 13, verses 16 to 18, which, when that happens, that's when World War III is truly going to heat up and reach, the War of Armageddon status. And then shortly thereafter, Yahushua is going to make his second coming. But yeah, So let's go back to that article. People are growing increasingly uneasy as President Donald Trump's attacks on Iran are looking more and more like they could be part of right-wing religious fanatics' fantasy for the apocalyptic. The Cradle Media's Jonathan Larson wrote that American soldiers were given a pep talk about the war in Iran. A U.S. combat unit commander told them that the attack is part of God's divine plan. He said that President Donald Trump was anointed by Jesus for the specific purpose to ignite Armageddon. And like I said, self-fulfilling prophecy, because Donald Trump was anointed by Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. As it says in Daniel chapter 4, verse 22, the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men and setteth up whomever he will, even the basest of men, you Edomites. And as it says, and I believe it's Psalms chapter 75, election or cometh neither from the east nor the west, nor the north or the south, but is the Most High who setteth up one and taketh down another. And with the way things are looking, Nero 47 is that cruel Lord and fierce king in Isaiah chapter 4, who, as we can see, he started off this conflict with Iran. And if he makes it all the way until the sea hip, hey, he was anointed for the purpose to ignite Armageddon. U.S. troops were told Iran war is for Armageddon. Return of Yahweh Shai, well, Return of Jesus, as they say, advocacy group reports commanders given similar messages at more than 30 installations in every branch of the military, Larson wrote. The comments come as part of a lawsuit brought by the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. However, it is only one of 110 lawsuits brought in 48 hours from over 40 units across 30 installations, the report said. The complaint came from Christians, a Muslim, and a J-ish soldier. But I'm going to jump around a bit in this article. The concept is bad for anyone seeking peace in the Middle East. One 2024 report by Forward explained. But hey, this is great news for the elect, because hey, we know that when the War of Armageddon takes place, after the micro C-hip implant is mandatorily implemented, our salvation is at hand. Love when I'm in the military and my boss is like, time for Armageddon, commented author and journalist Emily St. James. And hey, to you Israelites that are in the military, and you're feeling convicted in your spirit by hearing the words of the prophets, and you better get out of that military, because you're going to be a part of that northern army whose great stink and ill savor shall come up, because you're ultimately going to fight against Yahweh Shai in the valley of Jehoshaphat, when he makes his second coming. Writers and former Cato Institute policy analyst Will Wilkinson wrote, "Personally, I don't think we should bring about Armageddon." Well, you have no goddamn say in the matter. Writer and elections lawyer at the Cato Institute, Walter Olson, quoted a line from the 1965 song So Long Mom, a song for World War III, with lyrics by Tom Lehrer, and this is what he said on his way to Armageddon. And hey, for you U.S. soldiers that find yourself in the Valley of Jehoshaphat for the War of Armageddon, hey, that's going to be all she wrote for you. So long, Mom. And this is what he said on his way to Armageddon. But that's it with this article. Let's get back to these precepts. This is Revelation chapter 19. I'm going to start at verse 11. And the header reads, the coming of, it says Christ, but it's Hamashiach, the anointed. And I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse. And horses in the scriptures can symbolize power. So This white horse symbolizes the great power and chariot, or so-called UFO, that Yahushua is going to be returning in, which when we go to 2nd Esdras chapter 13, the prophet Esdras said it was so massive he couldn't see the end of it. It was like a mountain. And he that sat on him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war. Who is this that cometh from Edom with dyed garments from Basra? His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns, symbolizing him taking away the rulership of you heathens. And he had a name written that no man knew but he himself. And that just simply means, even the elect don't understand the magnitude and gravity of the power and, status that Yahushua has. Verse 13, and he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, like one that were dipped in a wine vat, and his name is called the Word of the Most High. And when you read John chapter 1, what does it say about Yahushua? He is the Word of the Most High made flesh. And the armies which were in heaven, when you read Revelation 12 verse 7, it says Michael and his angels, the archangel Michael, which you can look at as a general, is going to be returning with Yahushua as well, with the host of heaven, a fleet of chariots coming to make war. And the armies which were in heaven, this is that war in heaven also in Revelation 12, followed him upon white horses, many chariots, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. And out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, symbolizing, that concentrated heat, or the so-called laser beams that are going to be getting fired from the chariots, that with it he should smite the nations, chiefly you Edomites, especially Basra or America, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron in the kingdom of heaven, when you heathens are going to be slaves under the Israelites. And he treadeth the winepress of the fierceness of the wrath of the Almighty God. But I'm going to jump down to I'll keep reading down. Verse 16. And he hath on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Verse 17. And you can Ezekiel chapter 39 further elaborates on these next couple of verses. And I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great Most High, that ye may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, and the flesh of mighty men, and the flesh of horses, and of them that sat on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. That great slaughter of you heathens militaries, especially America's military, that northern army in the valley of Jehoshaphat. When you go to Ezekiel chapter 39, it talks about how all these dead bodies are going to be a great feast for these animals to pick to the bone. And then after that, when the elect, the 144,000, come down with Yahushua off the chariots, that's when in Abaratazam of that number, we're going to enslave you heathens, beginning with the elites. And your first duty is going to be picking up all these dead bodies and bones to bury them, from the war of Armageddon. Verse 19, and I saw the beast, and the beast is speaking of NATO, which the U.S. is a part of, and the kings of the earth and their armies, not just NATO, but these other nations like Russia or Gog, China, Iran, Turkey, these Arab nations. Hey, the armies of the 1948ers gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army. Because when Yahushua makes his second coming, these heathens are going to stop fighting each other and, fight against Yahushua or attempt to fight against Yahushua. But, hey, it's going to be a first round knockout. no competition, which brings us to my last precept in 2nd Esdras chapter 13 in the Apocrypha. I'm going to start at verse 5, which reads, "And after this I beheld, and lo, there was gathered together a multitude of men," the armies of the heathens, "out of number, from the four winds," or the four corners of heaven, the four corners of the earth, to subdue the man that came out of the sea, or the waters, the Shemaims, the heavens, as it said back in Revelation chapter 19. "And I saw heaven opened. But I beheld, and lo, he had graved himself a great mountain, and he flew up upon it." That great horse, or this great fathership chariot, Yahushua is going to be returning in. "But I would have seen the region or place whereout the hill was graven, and I could not, because it was that massive." Think about those, miles-long ships in that movie Independence Day. Verse 8, "And after this I beheld, and lo, all they which were gathered together to subdue him were sore afraid, and yet durst fight." Back in Revelation 19, "And I saw the beast and the kings of the nations and the armies gathered together to fight against him, on the white horse. And lo, as he saw the violence of the multitude that came, he neither lifted up his hand, nor held sword, nor any instrument of war." As it says in Isaiah 47, "I will not meet thee as a man." Yahushua is returning in his perfected angelic body with, the armies of heaven. "But only I saw that he sent out of his mouth," remember back in Revelation 19, "and a great sword came out of his mouth. But I only saw that he sent out of his mouth as it had been a blast of fire, and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks and tempests," those so-called laser beams that concentrated heat from the chariots. And, they tried to represent this the best they could in the Independence Day, because when those ships went to fire, what did it look like? The bottom opened up like a mouth, and they destroyed everything within a many miles radius. Verse 11, "And all they were mixed," Salakia, "and out of his lips a flaming breath, and out of his tongue he cast out sparks and tempests, and they were all mixed together, the blast of fire, the flaming breath, and the great tempest, and fell with violence upon the multitude which was prepared to fight, and burned them up, every one, so that upon a sudden of an innumerable multitude nothing was to be perceived, but only dust and smell of smoke. When I saw this, I was afraid." They also tried to, visualize this in that Tom Cruise War of the Worlds movie. When people got hit by those laser beams, they turned into a puff of smoke. But hey, this is what everything you're seeing right now is ultimately leading towards: the War of Armageddon and the ushering in of the Messiah. But, so-called Jesus is not coming to help out Uncle Sam. Yahushua is coming to take down Uncle Sam, you Edomites and you heathens as a whole. But that's it with this video. With this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharallah, and until next time,